Hi, Zoom people. Just making sure you guys can hear me. Okay, good. Thanks, Jonathan. All right. I'm always nervous that my computer is going to be afraid. I've got like 9 things open at once. It's like, what do you expect me to do, sir? I can hear the fan spinning. Oh, all right. Let's see, that's up there. Just by way of announcement to you folks here in Zoom and anybody on YouTube, it doesn't look like, yeah, I might have one person. Um, so I'll release this in the video for next week as well, the overview video. But I wanted to do like a you've got to do the requirements in order thing, and it's more headache than it's worth. It's turning out. So I'm going back to. You'll still get the check marks on the side of the modules in Canvas, but I'm going back to do them in whatever order, so you don't run into the situation where you can't move on because there were problems blocking people from, if they didn't fully do the critique, they couldn't turn in their gestures, that kind of stuff. So anyway, uh, I noticed it was a problem, and I'm just removing that, and I'll deal with it. If people don't watch the videos, that's punishment in itself. They won't know how to do the stuff they're supposed to do. So it is what it is. But I'd rather not punish people who are doing it properly by throwing those roadblocks up. So anyway, so you'll notice next week. Oh, actually, I did it for this week too. If you haven't turned in everything yet, you'll notice you can turn it in kind of as you like. All right. All right, 10:03. I'm going to start off with some gestures before we kick off, and then I'll do one of those straight line block in figures as a demonstration. So feel free to jump in if you have any other questions, even if they're non-related or whatever. I'm just going to be drawing and sort of chatting as I go. I'm going to use Vine charcoal too. I'll probably use a combination of my charcoal pencil. I'm going to use this mechanical style one today, and my Vine charcoal for gesturing. I like the Vine because I can gesture and then just kind of smear and gesture again. For you, you probably shouldn't do that because you're turning your gestures into me, each of them. Though you could gesture once, take a picture, smear, gesture again, take a picture, smear, whatever you want to do. All right, I'm using quick poses today. I think last time I used line of action. This time I'm going to use quick poses. I don't like to use this. This is the challenges page. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it's got like these different challenges. I like to come over here to the left and just go to timed practice. Then the challenges, I think, pulls from a specific library of pictures. Like they all are related images. Timed practice just pulls all images. So, and then I can pick full pose. You could do hands, feet, and stuff too, I guess. Gender all, clothing all. Yeah, we'll do clothes too today. 60 seconds. I think I'm going to do 120 seconds. So that's 2 minutes per pose. Don't show them upside down. 20 images is plenty. In fact, I'll do 10. Well, no, I'll do 20. I'll just stop when I feel like it. All right. One thing about these gestures too, I've noticed, and I might have mentioned this already, and now it's not an issue, but I've noticed people sort of incorporating the weekly content into the gestures. So they'll get gestures that are like geometric looking and then gestures that are elliptical mass looking. You don't need to do that at all. In fact, I would recommend you don't do that. Let these gestures just be this flowing quick sketch practice where you find the line of action, some C curves, S curves. You get a feel for the pose and then you move on. Don't draw the full approach for the week in these gestures. I don't remember who it was. someone turned in 10 full geometric figures, like fully drawn out. I'm like, this had to have taken you hours to do. Don't do that. If the drawing's taking you longer than 2 minutes, you're too invested or you're going too slow or whatever. All right. That being said, these aren't supposed to be panic drawings. They're just loose, and if one doesn't look perfect, who cares? Move on to the next one. It's not a problem. All right, without further ado. I wish I could play music for you, but I always end up with copyright strikes when I do that. So I suppose I could cue up some like no copyright music. This big C is like the main deal on this pose, right? Little sense of the head. A little bit of the knee here. Toes are pointed. God, that just looks painful. My goodness. So you can see what I'm after here. This is sort of the gestural thing I'm after. This would be a fine gesture right here. You turn this in, I'm like, that's cool, right? There's nothing, there's no hands, there's no feet, there's nothing drawn here except for that sense of that pose. And this one took me all of 15 seconds or something. 2 minutes, you've got a little more time to kind of like, I don't know, find a little bit more specific stuff, but it shouldn't be, like if I can't see arms and legs, I don't even care. There's maybe where the pants are. That tilts forward more. Thigh down to knee. Just kind of a swoop. And then that toe is pointed. That's why I've got that little hook right there is like the pointed toe. Maybe I'll add some sense of the bottom of the foot. I don't know. The point here isn't to draw the actual figure. It's just to get a feel. As I said, you know what? This is why I like Vine. Now I've got a page to myself again. I always like to include props when they're there, because they help me kind of get a sense for, I'll draw through them like that, but the prop kind of gives me a sense of what the design of this thing is going to be. That whole arm just feels like a triangle to me. This is like the wave of the bottom of that thing that he's wearing. Roman situation. So I've got, this is more of an S curve maybe, and then on the back, you know what, actually though, it's like knee, I like that feel a little bit better, and then I can come back in the calf like that. That foot's planted. I feel like that knee's a little bit sharper. I'm going to do the same thing here. Two figures, you can tackle both of them if you feel like it, or you can just tackle the one. I really quite like there's that bottom figure. He's got his head, and it's just boom. It's like a C curve straight down to that front foot. And then there's one that deviates out like that. the other foot. They're kind of somewhat even on the ground. It's the bottom of that gi. Is that what those are called? Whenever I can see a strong heel like that, I like to put it. It's like a C for the heel, C for the ball of the foot, and you get that sense of the whole foot there. That one's more like a wedge. So I've got the feel, I've got that guy's sense of his pose. That's good enough. That's reasonable for me. One thing I hope this doesn't look like to you is just like there's the head, there's the arm to the other arm up to the hand, where there's this sort of stick figure thing going on. Right? This is going to be stiff, and this doesn't have the flow at all that this has. And while I do like elbow scribbles, like a little busyness there where I imagine the elbow to be before up to the hand, it's not like a stick figure per se. Oh, we got famous people in this one. I'm working my way through my newsprint pad backwards, by the way. So these are the backs of already spent pages. So getting double usage here. All right, this is a closed pose and the model's kind of partly cropped off. So I'm going to be giving myself a sense of where things are at, like the hands here. If I were to make this triangle, right, legs going down. So this is like my abstract. This was where the elbows felt like that elbow bend was. Notice this one comes back in like that. It's got that kind of a feel to it. Like that head's going to go off the page. So in this gesture right away, I can tell the head's going to be off the page. And I kind of feels like she's tilted a little bit more. That one. Do a couple more of these as warm up. Oh, that's an interesting pose. Little sense of the head, but I'm gonna get that back. There's like a empty shape there. We'll talk about that in the coming weeks. Up into that upper arm. Exaggerate that head looping back a little bit. There's some interesting line. I really like ribs to stomach lines. I always like to get those in because there's just a little bit of A little bit of stuff you can do to make it feel body-like. Just a few little overlapping lines. You just have to pay attention. These are exaggerated, but you can kind of see this front edge. There's little bits of light that show us there's like a side to the contours and stuff. Like that hip goes up in this elliptical way all the way around here. There we go. I want to make sure I get that C in. And even here, I haven't exaggerated as much as I probably should. Like this should probably, right? It was pretty drastic. Blow charcoal dust all over my computer. Let's do a pencil real quick. This feels like a closed pose to me, so opening there. I like to do these circles whenever I see an empty space opening, like between the arm and body. I just make a roughly sized circle there and another one down below the leg, just as like a reminder of what's going on. So I can go, okay, I got a knee here down to this foot. It's kind of like a preliminary roadmap, I guess. There's that ball and heel again. That's just going to give me, it feels like a foot. It's not a foot. It just feels like it. You got this heel hook, ball to toe. That's enough. I do see the front of this leg bowing out, but I have to ask myself, what's the actual nature of that leg? And it was that kind of an arc. All right, this will probably be the last one. These arms feel like there's tension, like they're straight locked. And so I'm probably going to have more of a straight line situation. I might have a little interrupt for the elbow. A square stack for the arms. That's what those arms feel like when they're straightened out to me. S curve. There's kind of if I look at the front edge of the body, there's this big curve. It's almost just like a big C curve down to the feet like that. So the front has this big gentle curve, and then the back here is where I'm going to get this kind of slightly more exaggerated curve. One thing with shoulders, always look for, don't end at the body. Always look for the back here in the back. There's a part of the shoulder, the scapula, which we'll get to. There's like a reason to have a little hook there. Almost, well, I'd say pretty much always. Even in the gesture, you can get that in and have it start feeling pretty good. There's the other side, you know. I might come back in right here and just add a little bump there for the forearm. It'll make it feel a little more forearmy. All right, this will be the last one. Oh my goodness. Smack my microphone. This is closed. This is the weirdest, like, closed open pose that it just lends itself to that kind of a shape right off the bat to me. There's like this, if I look right here, there's like the letter G with his foot up his leg to his torso up to the arm. There's like a big letter G. Clothes always, I don't want to say they interrupt the gesture, but they can interrupt the flow. They have a lot of secondary sort of lines and stuff that can confuse what's really happening in the body. This arm is just like a big C curve. Like where this leg should come up and like be continuous, we hit pant seam that starts to stretch at a different direction. All right. We'll go ahead and stop it there. I feel reasonably warmed up. Hopefully that gives you a sense. I'm going to do this every week that I do live streams. I'll have this gesture session. Hopefully that gives you a sense of what yours should be like. So we did, I don't know if we did 10. How many did we do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We did 8. So 2 more, and that's your gesture practice for the week. That's how it should feel. If you're stressing or drawing for a longer time period than what we just did, maybe plus a little bit for the 2 more gestures, then you're probably giving it more time than you should. Again, that practice is 100% about just finding the flow and learning to gather that information as a preliminary sort of investigation of the pose before you dive in and start adding more specifics and more detailed information. You'll notice how many facial features I drew the whole time I was doing that. 0, not 1. How many fingers and toes? Again, 0. Not maybe heel and ball of foot, but that's it. Right? You don't need to draw specifics. All right. I won't harp on that. Well, I will. I'm going to harp on that every single week, but anyway. This is the pose that I want to do today. Pull him up just a little bit. I kind of liked his hunchy attitude. So this is the roadmap for what I'm about to head into. If you're watching on YouTube, it's telling me that the current bit rate is lower than the recommended bit rate. I need to upgrade my internet or something. My kids are going to school right now upstairs and our internet is taxed. So sorry if it's choppy. Because I'm successfully able to separate YouTube and Zoom now, so I've got Zoom open, but nobody on YouTube can see the Zoom, then I'll go ahead and leave the streams up. Just if you need to revisit them or whatever, I won't take the streams down anymore because I don't need to. It's only me on the screen, so I'm happy to leave them up. All right, so roadmap of what I'm going to do. I'm starting with the gesture. Of course, I am going to start with a piece of vine charcoal for the gesture because I know it will get out of the way and allow me to draw on top of it, particularly since I can't go super light-handed or you won't see what I'm doing very well. I'm going to opt for vine charcoal. You could just as easily use your medium charcoal pencil to start this. Just keep a light hand. All right. And then I'm going to, after the gesture, I might find some elliptical information that's helpful. So I might incorporate elliptical masses into the figure as well. I probably won't draw geometrically. That's really elliptical masses and geometric figures are kind of how I think about the pose as I'm drawing it, and they inform what I do with my contours and how I shade eventually. You don't necessarily need to block them out that way. That being said, if you know how to gesture, you can conceive of the figure in these elliptical masses and the different masses of the body, and geometrically, like three-dimensionally, you can kind of invent your own poses with practice. And then it becomes, you use a reference, but you could also just draw it without a reference. That would be a nice end state goal. For now, especially when I'm drawing observational, I have the model in front of me. Those are just the ways that I'm thinking about the model, and I'll use them a little bit if they're helpful, but oh, hey, this guy has stripes on his arm. If you look at his tattoo, that's super helpful. Like the lines on his tattoo wrap his arm, and that gives you like an idea of what the cylinder of his arm would do. I wish everybody was just tattooed as a grid. That'd be great. Every model. All right, let's see. I'm going to, in this gesture first, because I want it to sit on the page, I want it to take up head to foot the whole page, I'm going to kind of plan for that. So I need to make sure that my feet are down here and make sure that my head is up here. And then about halfway through is underwear line, right? And we'll get into measuring techniques. Well, actually, we just did. So now I feel fine going. If I just take a real quick halfway measurement, it's not quite the underwear line. So head, it's a little below. So that's not bad right there. So this is going to inform the rest of my gesture as I put this figure together. My priority in this pose is going to be keeping that sense of the hunch. I want his body to feel hunched. I need to make sure I don't lose it. It's like, and I'll spend as much time as I feel like I need to getting the pose feeling good. So already I feel like I've got his, he's kind of standing up straight. If I look in the photo, there's a diagonal feel. Like if I go from this shoulder to the foot, there's kind of a diagonal feel. And I don't feel like I'm quite getting it in this pose. So I think it's because this leg is too far that way. So I'm just going to be a little more deliberate about this. Just move that stuff over. I don't like this line on his back. I don't think it's doing what it should. It's got a little more character than that. Kind of goes out for the hunch and then back in. Yeah, there we go. And this is Vine, so that super dark line I just put down, it's going to go away. I'm just going to pretend the head's not there for a second. It's a real strong sense of that upper arm. That little dip in his clavicle, that's what that bone's called, but that collarbone dip is really nice. It's like if you can see the bone, let me see if we can see the mouse. From here, down and in, it's just an S. It's like a lazy S down in. That's a good... Jonathan, did you see my mouse when I just did that? Do you see my pointer? Is it? Oh, dang it. All right. All right, good. That'll have to do. All right, so I'm going to get that S in there because that's going to make it feel like he's hunched. Like that hunch up, part of that is this S. Shoulder joint, that's just a sphere. I mean, look at that shoulder. It's just a flippin' sphere. I'm just going to put it in. I always like to pay attention to shoulders and chin, like what's happening with the chin and the shoulders. It's going to save you from sticking your head way too high up the top of the model, by the way. And I think I've got these shoulders wrong. This one should be down a little. There we go. So this chin is right next to that shoulder. That's going to give me an idea of what to do with the rest of the face. He's looking this way. All right, I think mine is a little more squat than the one that I see up there. Like I've made him a little wide, but I'm gonna fix that in the next stages. So I'm gonna call that good for gesture, maybe a sustained gesture. That took me 5 minutes or I don't know quite how long, but. Oh man. Yeah, it's giving me bandwidth errors as well. Am I still super choppy, Jonathan? Oh man. Here, I'm gonna. So Kayla, that should just be me. Sorry. If anybody uses their mic now, it should still just show me. I just saw that in the chat. Let's see if this helps. Oh, Kayla, you still looking at Jonathan? If you click the 3 buttons up to the top right and just say pin video, it'll make me always on top. I thought I was spotlighting my video for everybody, but apparently not. I'm not even an option right now. Here, let me remove this. Now, okay, now try. Can you see me now? Ugh, my bandwidth, it probably is. Okay, is it still frozen? Man, we may have to just bear with this, and then I think it might have to be I'm either going to have to upgrade my internet or we're going to have to ditch either Zoom or YouTube. I just don't think my connection can quite handle both of them. All right, I'm going to power on so you can see at least the process going on. Hopefully you YouTube people are sticking with me. It says the connection's excellent. Totally inconsistent. All right, so that's what I call that ghosting the drawing. With Vine Charcoal, this is nice because it sets me up to draw on this later. When I'm shading, I now have like a mid-range that I can erase out of or darken into and stuff. So this haziness is totally fine for our drawing purposes. And if you're nervous about, hold on, I don't know if that spotlight's even working. If you're nervous about making a mess like this, don't be unless you're using your soft charcoal pencils and really digging in with it. This mess is going to help in the end. And right now it's like, oh, that's all over or that's really messy. But by the time I show you what line to look at, that mess will just fall into the background and it'll provide support for the drawing. Do you guys notice a difference when I spotlight my video? Like when I do this, does it force you to see my video large? You just see mine. Kayla, is it the same for you? Like, oh, okay. I'm going to assume the spotlight is. So do you see me? Oh, my internet connection is unstable. Do you see me and my drawing as the main thing now? All right. But it doesn't give you the option to pin the video. Okay. No, that's fine. Let me know if it starts flipping back to Jonathan or something. I'm not sure. It doesn't give you the option either. Ugh, this is probably. Oh no, you're fine. Pin. If I pin my video, then I think it just does it for me. If you're on the app, I'm not sure. If you're on a laptop, you should be able to like hover over my name. Do you? You see that 3 dot? Like if you go to the top. You're seeing Jonathan as the big main person. What in the world? What do I have? Are you using the app, Michelle and Kayla, or just? Okay. Because if I. Okay, yeah. So Michelle, I see your name large and I see Kayla's name large when you talk, Kayla. But if I go up to where the names are, I can, there's like blue things that hover over and there's like a little 3 dot thing I can click and say, and it gives me options and I can go pin. And now I've pinned myself. Now, no matter who talks, I'm still the big thing that I see. Do you? Yeah. So if you click that on, it's like if you see my name small or whatever, you'll see the 3 dots. You can pin me, and then no matter what happens, I'll be the large person. Okay, good. All right, so I'm going to start measuring this figure. I've got my roadmap, and the nice thing with the gesture is now when I take measurements, I'm not flying blind. I can just correct things. And what I'll say about measuring, use it to correct things that look weird not don't become so hyper focused on the measuring that you change stuff that is working really well. Now, at first, you might have a hard time telling what is working really well. If that's the case, just measure and measure and measure and keep measuring until you feel like you've measured all there is to measure and things seem proportionate. But always, no matter what your measurements are telling you, always use your like feeling eye to ask yourself, does this pose, does this figure feel good? Does it feel right? Because you can measure yourself right out of a nice flowing pose. That being said, right now, one of the biggest issues for us is not having experience with proportions that much and having things get way too big or way too small awkwardly. And the way to protect against it is to measure, hold yourself accountable to that measurement, and change things. And you do that enough times and your brain kind of gets the hint and stops you from making those mistakes in the first place to some extent, and allows you to make the changes without stressing too much about it when it's necessary. So one thing that's nice with this bald guy is I can use his head as like a comparison measurement. And what I like to do is to just be like, this is the size of the head. What else is that size throughout the figure? Before I do that, I'm gonna check just some basic overall stuff. So it's like shoulder to shoulder. I can kind of go edge of this shoulder, edge of that shoulder, and just see how it compares maybe to the overall body. Let me check on the model. One of those, it's like toe to knee, knee to hand, hand to armpit, armpit to head. So one of these, it was like toe to knee, so I know my knee could be a little bit higher, or a bit, let's see, toe to knee, knee to hand, hand to armpit, armpit to top of head. So there's my, having measured a bunch of times, my brain helped me out and had me gesture this shoulder distance such that it actually was close, and was pretty close, pretty darn close to what is in the picture, which is this measurement here. When I go to the toes, goes to just below the knee. When I go from the knee, it goes to that hand that's crunched. When I go to the hand, it goes to the armpit. When I go from the armpit, it kind of lines up with the top of the head. So that's a measurement now, this to there. That's a measurement I trust. And comparing it to the height of the model, I kind of trust it. So now that I trust this, I can use it. I trust it relative to the height, but what else is like that? Width of the shoulders is the same as from here to there. So across the body, across the gap, and to that wrist is the same distance. So there my body didn't help me, my brain didn't help me out. This is too far that way, or this is too far that way. So I could move this line in to make up the difference, but this is kind of feeding my hunch, the hunched feel. So I think what I might do instead, I'm in an alignment here. I might move this line in just a little bit. I'm still going to need to move this in. So from shoulder to shoulder, that measurement goes like that. So that's the measurement I get. So even moving this over slightly, I still get the measurement. I have to move this in, and that is what it is. So I move that in, and if I think I can leave this arm where it's at. I'm going to find out where the other side of this hip is. If I take the measurement of the hips, it's like just to the ball of this shoulder. So that's what, when I looked up there on the model, so I'll give you a preview sort of what I'm doing. When I looked at the picture, I took a measurement from the back of the hips, like where that underwear line is, to the front, to this opening. And when I moved it up, it was the pencil seemed to go right about there on the model. Let me just double check that. So I'm taking the width of the waist, moving it up, and it goes to right sort of that into that S there. So now I know my hips are going to be, if I want them to be the right size, they have to do the same thing. So they start here at the back and go right to where that S is. So that's the width of my hips. So that's going to be the width right there. And I can check this width as well. Be like, how's that go once, twice into the waist? How about up there? Once, twice, and a little bit. All right, so I feel pretty good about those 3 ticks as well. No, I'm not going to do that. I almost jumped into something that we're going to tackle next week. No, the week after next. It has to deal with focusing primarily on these empty spaces, but I'm going to leave off that for a second. All right, so I feel good about the shoulder here. I feel good about the waist there. I'm going to check the distance between the two real quick. Like how am I as far as that distance is concerned? Well, I'm going to compare it to this. So from shoulder to shoulder, which is a measurement I trust, when I go like this, it doesn't quite make it in the drawing. If I do that same thing on the model, what happens? Shoulder to shoulder, it doesn't quite make it. It comes to like the middle there. Double check that. Yeah, I feel good about that. All right, so I've ticked some things here. I'm going to start sort of bridging the gap between them. One is I've got some work to do on this back. This feels like his ribs are broken, right? It's strangely proportioned. I'm going to fix that, and then I'm going to put the arm in as well, because once I have the back, I can use it to help me with the arm also. So right now I'm just focused on the back. I really quite like what the head is doing in here. This whole region here feels good to me, just to my feeling eye. So I'm going to try and retain that. It feels weird right through here to me. It's pretty weird. So I'm going to try and fix that. And then it feels okay down here, but it's also some sizes here feel a little bit weird. But for now, back. All right, comes out of the face at a slant like that. This is my medium charcoal pencil, by the way. Right about here, there's an angle break. So it looks kind of like a curve, but if I focus in, it's like an angle break that goes flat. I had this lobbing out way too far, I think. If I measure the angle there, that's about what I get. It's like, if I was on a clock, it's like 2 o'clock maybe. And right about even with that. So I'm taking a horizontal alignment. Where does this line break and start heading down towards this hip? If I take a horizontal alignment across, I can kind of figure out where it's at. So there, I have to go, all right, on the back, where does it break? Somewhere right in here. If I go straight across on the model, it goes through the chest, like almost even with the armpit. So right about there. I can check the size. So right here in the drawing, it's like from that angle break to where I feel like this next angle break is that distance, which is about exactly the same distance down to this hip. Is that what I see in the model? Yeah, that's pretty close. Ignoring that arm I gestured in. Now, that looks to me like a vertical in the model, sort of underwear line, I'm calling it. It looks like a vertical line, but it's not just vertical. So I put the vertical to make sure my relationship is good. There's some little specific angle changes in there that I'm going to get as well here in a little bit. So according to my measurements, I was way out left field on that one. I'm going to go ahead and do the back of the arm as well because it follows right here. Is his arm? Not quite. So it comes down at this angle. Then it looks, before I get to this, it looks like it dips a little bit. And then it straightens back out. There's like a real gentle zigzag going on there. And there's sort of a straight pass here. I have the angle breakdown here, but I think it actually happens up a little higher. All right, I'm going to do the front of the arm. Where should the front of the arm be? Well, I can take a measurement to compare. I just need to find something that I trust. I kind of trust the shoulder. I really kind of trust the head, even though I probably don't have reason to. I do know I trust between the shoulders. So maybe I can just take this measurement and see. It's like once, twice, almost 3. Let me see if that's true. So right now up on the model, I'm going to measure the width of the bicep, width of that arm, and just run it across the shoulders and see what number do I get. Once, twice, a little less than 3. So once, twice, 3 exactly. Let me just double check. Once, twice. And it goes past a bit. Once, twice. Dead on. Once, twice. Goes past a bit. So this feels good. That tick mark's pretty close. Right, what is this arm doing? I've got that tattoo that's really, you'll have to forgive me as I lean in. Okay. That tattoo is really telling me something about what I'm seeing on that arm because I see a perfect curve on the tattoo. I doubt that that's how it was tattooed on. I think we're seeing the front edge of that shoulder, which tells me I have a contour line because I'm looking at the side of something. I can make a line there and I'm looking at it from here. It's like all the way from here to there. Break. Kind of a straight line down that bicep. Here's where the tattoo's a liability. There's a little overlap here, and this is where knowing the anatomy helps. There's like a muscle that creates an overlap right there. We will get to it eventually. For now, just keen eyes are going to be your friend. There's an angle break somewhere here, right after the underwear line. There's a break in the angle. I'm going to check the arm width here. You can see, so this is probably as fun as watching paint dry, but you can probably see how deliberate this process is. This is going to take a good while, but that's the time that it takes to make sure that you're doing things accurately and you're not, as I said in I think one of the introductory videos back a while ago, your worst enemy in the drawing discipline is just the need to be finished already. Where you're like, I'm not going to spend 45 minutes checking and triple check. Who has the time? You better make the time because that's what it takes. He says saltily. Yeah, I've got that forearm too wide. Kind of don't mind though. Here's my advice on drawing hands. If you want to draw a good hand, step one is drawing a good wrist. Like if you get the anatomy and bones and sort of wrist situation convincing, then your arm stands a way better chance of looking convincing. All right, I'm going to speed things up just a tad here because we are running shy on time. This is exactly halfway. Oh, YouTube chat. Hi, AJ. Is that Alondra? I'm on super delay with that chat. The straight line approach is going to give me this zigzag, zig, zag, zig, and then zag back out. Where I might miss that in a different drawing and just make a simple arch and miss that sort of zigzag, or make something that's just wild and out of control. That gives me, there's a bone right there that's a really good landmark that you get if, so long as you're being careful, you'll get it. That ear is just a little parallelogram. It's like a rectangle that's skewed, and that's it. All right, that's all I'm doing for the head. Little overlap there is nice for the hand. Not drawing fingers, I'm just going to leave that hand like that for now. There's some cool stuff happening in this knee. I'm going to try and get in the contour. The back contour here is in the shade, so it's hard to see what's happening. Front edge here, there's a little overlap right there where this part of the leg, this little muscle, kind of sits. It like connects above the kneecap. Then you have the kneecap kind of peeking out from there. This little flat spot in the back of the leg here is kind of a nice thing to get. It's a good way to ease, like if you ever feel like there's something that comes down like this and then immediately changes like that, it may be doing that, but in the case right here, there's this little flat spot that just helps ease that trip, and it's worth paying attention, catching little things like that. So I'm at risk right now because I've not measured big things down here. There's a potential that I'm actually getting things off. I'm just going to check from toe to knee and see what that looks like. It's the same as knee to waistband, so that, knee to toe. Zoom folks, I apologize if the quality is crud. I thought I had it figured out last week. It seemed to work okay, but it keeps telling me my internet connection is unstable. Hey, Jonathan, we lost you for a second. I'm going to claim full responsibility. Right now, the width of this leg really has me... We're seeing it from the side. Okay, thanks, William. We're seeing it from the side, so it's going to be a little thicker than this front leg, but right now the thickness is enough to have me going, oh, am I sure about that? So I'm going to double check before I start laying in this contour line. I'm going to double check the thickness to make sure I'm getting it close. So now it's about the same thickness here as there. So double check this again. 1, 2 to the middle. 1. Yeah. Slightly wider than that. Yeah, I'm feeling better about this initial line out here. It seems like a little thing to just move this line in just a little bit, but I need to thin this leg up just a tad, and so I'm going to make some decisions that just squeeze it in a little bit. It is kind of a straight shot too. If I look at this thigh, I just go right off of these fingers. If I take a vertical alignment, it just looks like a vertical. It comes straight down from the armpit, and it's kind of a vertical line. So I had it bending out like this, sort of slanting this way. And it does do that at the top here, but somewhere behind that hand, there's an angle break, or maybe right below it. There's an angle break from this kind of a line to almost perfectly vertical. That has me feeling better about that leg already, so that's good. This leg's doing the same thing where this top line comes in and above this knee kind of hooks in like that. Then we have the knee coming out the front. All right, my quick shorthand for the foot is going to be to get this bottom edge here down to like some kind of toe. The toes, if I look at all of the toes, they kind of are on a vertical line that takes a trip backwards like halfway up, like that. If I look at the big toe, it kind of connects. This big part of the foot here kind of just comes down and connects to the big toe. That's about, I'm going to leave it there. I say right before I go drawing more into that foot. I don't want to get hung up on feet today. A thing that's descriptive of the foot but doesn't include all of the toes and all of the nitty gritty is going to be good enough. Sometimes it's nice, like on this front foot, if you just find out where's the big toe, it kind of comes in like that. And just put a sense of the big toe, that'll feel like a foot. For now, we'll dress these up later. All right, there's my straight line block in. I'm gonna do this. And I might even roll this kneaded eraser and just kind of lift up some stuff. I kind of drew it a little darker than I should have, but now I can come in and with my dark charcoal pencil, I can decide what to do with my line variety. Ooh, I missed some things down here. There's a really good thing happening here where the chest comes down and hits like a little wrinkle, just a small one. Just below that is a bigger fold that goes across the whole stomach. See, now higher still. There's my underwear line, so it's like there's this crease. And then below that, sort of a belly button. That stuff's going to help him feel like he's hunched over. So it's going to be compression on this side, so I'm looking for overlaps. Stretch on this side, so they're going to be way more gentle. My pencil lead just broke, so I'm just going to use the lead all by itself to do this part. I'm just finding places to darken up the line. Add some sense of line variety to it. Usually at intersections is where I tend to do it. So wherever you have kind of an overlap, All right, it is 12 after, so I'm going to call it. Anyways, I would go through and sort of give myself some line variety if I don't already have it evident in the drawing. This is the straight line blocking approach. This is where we would go. We'd get a drawing to this stage more or less before we head into shading and adding more detail and stuff to it. All right. Figure folks, any questions? Michelle, do I have you in figure drawing or are you in beginning drawing? I had you in beginning drawing before. Is that right? My advice for this oh, that's right. Now, don't worry about that. It comes with scads of practice, and if you're holding yourself accountable, you will get to the point where, as long as you don't run away from it and are like, you know what, that's hard, I'm not going to mess with it. It's like digging in and going, it's hard, I'm going to do it because I value what's going to come out of it, which is whatever ability that you're wanting to get as far as observational drawing is concerned. I will say getting really sensitive to this stuff allows you, being more abstract, if you were to take intermediate gets there a little bit and advanced, particularly figure drawing, which I don't offer online, but we'll be going back to in person, we get more abstract. So your gestures become these abstract swiping exercises that are still really descriptive and all of that. So well, I should show you drawings I did back in the day so you cannot feel so bad. If you're like, man, it looks easy, and then you go to do it and you're like, that's difficult. Yeah, that's practice. All right. Do I have any beginning folks in? Any non-figurative beginning folks in? I don't think I... If you're in YouTube, just throw it in the chat because I do have a little bit. If you're in intermediate, or not intermediate, if you're in figure drawing, the beginning class is going to be talking about negative space, which is something we're going to be talking about 2 weeks from now. So if you want to preview, you're welcome to stick around. If you just wanted some demonstration of this week's stuff, then I think that's going to do it for this one. There's a little more I could do down here, but I feel like I got the gesture, I measured and ended up getting the hunch the way I felt like I saw it. So I'd be happy to carry on with this drawing and start adding value and shading it. And we will get there. We're just not doing it right now. All right, I'm going to switch gears for a second for beginning folks, non-figurative. Oh, let's move this. We are talking about empty space. And so I'm going to, for better or worse, my goodness, I'm going to use this tricycle as my example. Make myself bigger. This image is helpful because it's so obvious what the negative space is. It's all of those things that pass through this tricycle. So all of the white matrix-like background. If I can look at those as shapes of themselves, in and of themselves, that's the exercise that we're doing. It's being able to ignore the complicated stuff that I see that's like, oh man, that's a whole tricycle. For our purposes for this week, it's not, there's no tricycle. And for you, I think it's the exercise is a bench, and then there's a positive, negative exercises of different objects, all of which should be dealt with in the same way that I'm going to do this tricycle. So let's kick off. I broke my dark pencil before. What a shame. All right, and make sure if you're in beginning, if you're watching, okay, William, thanks. If you're in beginning, make sure you're watching the video on how to ink, because that careful inking is going to be really important. And I might, given a little bit of, I'll probably do part of this tricycle and then maybe ink it. Let me grab a graphite pencil. Yeah, I'm in my flannel PJs. What of it? Just kidding. CH. I'm going to start this with an HB pencil, and that's where I'm going to stay. You know what? I'm looking at the time we have left, and I'm going to switch my idea. That tricycle is going to be quite invested, so I'm going to do a similar stool to what's in the assignment for you. No, don't want shopping. Sure, why not? Actually, let's do this. I'm going to do a stool so I can ink it. All right, there we go. Okay, so the first thing that you should do, so this is going to be a sort of a, it's going to be like the exercise in the sketchbook and your project combined. So we're going to negative shapes this, and then we're going to start inking it. And I think I'll zoom in a little bit here. I lied, that's casting weird shadows. All right. Ignore my charcoal dust I'm going to smear on the page too. You kind of want yours to be clean. I'm gesturing this in. So you remember we talked about gesture, and in our last project, like what is a gesture? It's just a quick sketch that gives you the generic sense of the thing. You can barely see it. That's how light I'm drawing. That's enough. So that gives me sort of my trapezoid overall shape to this stool. I have a round top. I'm not trying to draw. That's just sort of setting the boundaries. And again, super light, I have not drawn anything about this stool yet. I've just kind of laid out where it's roughly going to be. The very next thing I'm going to do for this practice, this is going to get us tuned to seeing negative shapes, is I'm just going to start drawing the shapes I see and comparing them to each other, making sure they're in the right spot so that I can get this stool to show up. I'm not drawing any parts of the stool. I'm not drawing anything about the stool except for the empty space behind it. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to start with the easiest shape that I see. And for me, it's this shape where my mouse is bouncing. That tall sort of trapezoid shape. I have my gesture here so I can kind of guess about where it's going to be. It happens somewhere in the middle. Now my initial gesture might be too big, too small. It might become irrelevant. It's just there to get me started on this. All right, so I'm going to say right about here. So I have line. It's more or less vertical here, and it's more slanted there. All right, so now I need to find out where does the bottom edge of this go. Can't be random, shouldn't be random. That's a specific shape for a specific thing. I would need to make my shape specific as well. So I'm going to take a measurement across the bottom and see how many times it goes up this straight side. And then I'll know sort of where to put it. So one of those goes once, twice, and a little bit. So this is where it's looking like it's going to end up once, twice, and a little bit. I think that's the bottom. What I need to do is get a measurement such that when I take that measurement and turn it, it goes once, twice, and a little bit, because that's what I saw up there. Bottom. Once, twice, and a little bit. Once, twice, and a little bit. All right, so I'm happy with that. Once I get this shape where I feel good about it, I can use it for everything else. So it's important I get this first one where I feel like it's good, where it's working. All right, one thing, I made the bottom of this really flat, and when I look at the image, it's actually got a bit of bend to it, like that. I'm going to make sure and do that. All right, that's pretty good for that shape. All right, next shape, there's one right next to it that shares an edge like this. It immediately starts turning down like that. And the bottom is even more curved like this, and then it's kind of straight. Hopefully you can see that shape. So I've got 1 and 2 there. If I go up above, there's kind of a nice little, let's see, triangle right here. The main trick here is not to see a stool, right? I just see a little triangle of white. I don't see a stool. There is no stool. There's only shapes. Ooh, this one's interesting. There's a big wide shape here that has a little hook on the end. I feel comfortable with these shapes because I feel comfortable with this shape. If I made this one willy-nilly and was just like, whatever, I don't care, then every other shape that I try to do suffers. This straight line comes down a certain ways and then has a little dip, like a little channel. How long is that? I'm going to take a measurement. I'm going to measure this height maybe against the width of the bottom of this one. And they're exactly the same. So this width right there is the same as that height right there. So that tells me how far down to go before I hit my little dip. This is a straight line in line with this one. And it swoops some distance over here. I'm not going to finish this shape off yet because I don't trust this. Don't quite trust that swoop yet. Drawing that swoop from the shoulder is really going to help. So you see me just kind of like finding it lightly from my shoulder. I've got a bunch of little lines in there, but I'm kind of settling in on one that works. And there's a swoop up here too. All right, there's kind of a large gap here. How wide before I get to this next shape? Let's see. It's exactly the same as the top here. So boom, boom, right there. That's about what I saw when I looked up there. That's the edge of this next empty shape. The point of which is down a little bit from this one. And it immediately, it's like this one over here, it immediately starts that bending trip down. How wide is the bottom? It's a little shorter than this side. So that's about right. Again, as I said, the trick here is not to see a stool at all. Ooh, that's way too vertical. There we go. All right, so this big one down here stops right in line with this. So now I feel comfortable closing that shape off and even getting rid of these little exploratory lines. There's a line that starts like this, and then it's just an arc between it like that. Except for it is a little bit cut off down here at the bottom, like that. There's a shape where the point starts right back here. It maintains a consistent spacing away from this shape on this edge. Then it bumps out like this. Bottom edge comes down. How wide is that bottom edge? It's like the same as this one. So like that. And it's got this kind of sharper hook on the top. It's not as gentle as this one. All right, straight up from this. Now I'm on the outside of this stool. So what do I do with this shape? I can just carry it all the way. I don't have any more open spaces. Now I'm kind of at the silhouette edge of this stool. I think I could go around and do the silhouette and just draw the silhouette in, or I could sort of artificially turn it into shapes, which I may do. Like this. Like I might say, you know what, from there, ooh, see now here, Now I need to take a measurement because I think I've gotten I've gotten a little too excited. If I look at this dip on this shape and where it occurs relative to this dip, it's way further in. So I got to keep myself on track with that. Where does the dip of that shape actually happen? Comes here. It actually happens right there. There's like a little neck in this white shape. What happened was I started drawing the contour edge of this stool. I stopped looking at the empty shape and I started looking at the stool, the edge of the stool. And immediately things started growing and started getting out of control. And only when I stopped and looked, I was like, ooh, you know what? I'm getting a little messed up because I had stopped paying attention. It's the danger. That's better. So I think I'm going to turn this just into its own shape, like maybe from this corner here. Just so I get a sense of this being a shape as well. There's another shape. I'm just creating sort of a wraparound situation with this stool because I don't want to just draw the outline. I think the exercise has you drawing the outline. For this one, I'm going to have it sort of shrink wrapped, I guess is one way to think of it. How long is this? I'm just going to check it against something I trust. Same as the height of this shape. So boom, to boom, there. There's another shape. If I carry this on and if I were trying to draw the stool itself, I would go, oh, there's a loop here. I'm trying not to draw that loop. I'm trying to let the loop happen as I draw the other shapes. But I do notice this arc jumps this gap and picks up right there. And it also lines up with this one. There's kind of a bump here. That's going to be a shape. The edge of that, it's like straight up from this. And I think I'm just going to go from the top of this. I'm just going to invent a shape out here because it's just a curve. All right, so I've drawn the stool, but only using the empty shapes. And the way I can tell that, and what I'm going to be looking for in your drawings, is do I see crossover? Do I see this line crossing straight through that line? Because if you're looking at the empty shapes and focusing only on the empty shapes, you'll never cross over like that. You only cross over like that when you're looking at the edge of the stool and drawing the stool. And in fact, it doesn't cross that way, it crosses this way. So if I follow this line and just carry straight through with a hard line to the edge, I'll know, oh, you're looking at stool, you're not looking at empty space, because the empty space is literally just floating shapes. There is no intersection of at all, right? It's just shape against shape against shape against shape against shape, all floating, describing this thing's silhouette. So watch for that in your drawings. If I see the bottom of this little thing drawn in, like I'll give you an example of what not to do. If I see this, then I'll know, oh, you were looking at the stool, you weren't looking at the empty space, because this is not empty space. This is part of the stool that you got off track on because you were focusing on the stool, right? Same story if I were to come over here and draw this going all the way through there, all the way through there. I know when I see this that you were looking at stool. You weren't looking at empty space, because if you were looking at empty space only, you'd never make these marks. Those or those. It only comes when your concentration breaks and you start drawing the thing again rather than the negative space around the thing. All right, I'm going to grab a couple of pens so we can look at inking. All right, for our purposes, to keep things economical, we're just using Sharpies. If you've got micron pens and stuff, you can really go down a rabbit hole on careful inking. We're just gonna get started with Sharpies. And I don't have my fine point, let me grab it. All right, this is the step I would take. I probably won't have time to ink the entire thing, but I'm at least going to get us started using this really fine-tipped Sharpie. I think it's the ultra fine point. That's what I'm going to start with. Then I'm going to move my way to the fine point, which is just the regular old Sharpie. That one's kind of dull. That one's better. And then for larger areas, this chisel tip Sharpie is a good one. So first thing I'm going to do is just go over my shapes with this ultra fine point. Watch out in your project, by the way. In your project, you'll have borders on the edges. You don't want to ink your borders. You don't want to ink any lines that aren't part of a negative shape. You're just inking the negative shapes. That is it. For all boxes, no matter if you're filling in the negative shape or the positive shape, if you ink all negative shapes, then you just fill in either way, depending on the project. Make sure you watch the videos for that. All right, I'm going to start where I started in the drawing. And if you want, If you have a ruler or something, you're welcome to use it for this part. Like if I know that I'm going to be inking this line, and I know it's straight, this is going to help. Be careful if you're using a Sharpie and a ruler. This fine point does, this ultra fine point does okay. If you Sharpie along a ruler with just a regular Sharpie, you will create black ink all along this thing. And then when you move it, it'll smear black ink everywhere. So be careful with that. Here I'm just getting these straight lines in, and then closing off. And I'll do this one over here. If you need to turn your page, so like my page is like this, it's hard for me to get in there accurately. If you need to turn your page to make a better line, feel free. Only use your ruler or your straight edge if it makes sense to. Try to freehand stuff that needs to be freehanded. So I'm only doing it for the edge that's straight on this. As soon as it starts to curve, I'm coming back in to take care of that freehand. At this stage, it's worth stopping and looking for details you might have missed. So this is a relatively simple stool, but as I look at this little section right here, there's actually a little bit of, if I come up like this, it kind of zigs in there. That little zigzag there, that little bit of zigzag is going to provide me details. It's going to provide me more interest and more intricacy, I guess, to the drawing than it had. Do I see one on the other side? Kind of. It's like, it's a little differently shaped. That little bit, just that little bit of zigzagging is going to look to our eyes to be like detail, to be interesting. So make sure you get that. You slow down and you get stuff like that in your drawing. I've got some more happening down here. It's a little bit messy in pencil, but if I can't talk and draw at the same time. If I look, what do I see? There's like a jut out and down. Just that little bit of shift. There's like a little angle change there and a little one there. It's going to be details. So if you're dealing with a pipe wrench or a phone or any of the reference stuff that I've provided for you, looking for those little bits of detail is going to be really helpful. All right, let's look at inking this real quick. taking advantage of the natural twist of my wrist here. That's why I keep turning the page. Feel free to turn the page for yourself as well, whatever helps you, as I said, whatever helps you make the best marks. All right, I'm going to start filling these shapes in with this. Before I get to filling the shapes in with ink, I'm going to come in with my eraser and gently, with my kneaded eraser, I'm just going to start lifting that messy pencil out. That's going to leave me with a really clean shape. Only do this after you have laid down all of your negative shape lines, and I would give it 5 to 10 minutes for the ink to dry before you start getting it with an eraser. If you ink these lines and then start erasing them immediately, you will grab a puddle of ink with your eraser and smear it all over the page. All right, let's get closer. All right, I'm throwing a shadow onto it, but you'll get the idea. All right, I'm going to keep this ultra fine Sharpie, and I'm just going to find the corners, the tight corners, and round them off. This is going to stop my ink from bleeding. If I tried this with a big Sharpie, I couldn't do it nearly as cleanly. I think I'll just fill this shape in entirely because it's small. I don't want to try and fill in the whole space with this Sharpie because it's just too small. I'm just kind of growing away, trying to do a clean job of making the lines grow inward towards the shape. I'll just do this top little section here so we can see how it comes together. I'm on the lookout for little dips like this. Like, see that there's like a little dip to this line. I'm just going to clean it with a line slightly. That's going to make this read much cleaner. So look for those little dips, those little inconsistencies. And just iron them out. You can afford to iron them out without losing detail if you're careful. All right, so that's about as much as I would go with this ultra fine point. I'm going to grab just this regular Sharpie now. And it's going to be good for doing these intermediate spots. Put on a podcast and listen to it if you need to. Just get in the zone. I got to watch out because I'm a lefty. I'll plant my pinky in fresh ink and then dip it all over the rest of the drawing. All right. Invariably, we will get in a rush. Well, let me talk about that in a second. Chisel tip is good for just really laying in a lot of ink in those big areas. Make short work. It's tempting to try and get close to that line with this chisel tip. I'm not going to do it. Ideally, I would have already drawn that line out with the smaller Sharpies. This chisel tip is just for doing those big center areas. Invariably, what happens is we get inking and we start out really good, really careful. And then the magnitude of how much inking we have to do dawns on us, and we go, I've got something else I'd rather do. Good enough. Or we have this one and we go, the faster you use a Sharpie, the messier it's going to look, the grosser it's going to look. So if you find yourself being like, I'm not going to sit here all day inking, take a break, walk around, take a breath or two, and then come back to it when you can focus up, get into the zone, and just make careful, slow marks with your Sharpie. Another thing I might advise, you'll notice I'm bleeding through on the back. Oh, I don't know if you can see. You'll notice I'm bleeding through on the back here. If you have newsprint or some other paper that you can just slide up underneath, so here's my newsprint sitting behind this drawing. Now I can ink all I like. No matter how much I bleed through, it's going to bleed into the newsprint, and it's not going to mess up my next clean, fresh sheet of paper. Just a few things to watch out for. If you are inking like this, so let's do this with a dull Sharpie. If you're inking like this, the chances of you, so watch this clean edge that I put here already. The chances of you going like this raise dramatically. Look what I did to my nice clean line. I just wrecked it. I totally wrecked it. It's not unsalvageable right here, but you really want to avoid that messy, messy, messy line. You want it to be nice and sharp and crisp and clean like this. And that takes deliberate use with the Sharpie, deliberate inking and not letting yourself rush ahead. I was being lazy here and I got a little stray mark as well. There, I'm just going to clean it with one continuous line. There, it'll be like it never happened. All right, I think I'm going to call it there. If you have any questions, let me end this. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them. If you are wondering if what you're doing is correct, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Yeah, it's be careful. It's be careful week. So I'm going to call it there. I think what I might do is put out a survey. God, I don't want to put out I already put out a survey and I got like 50-50 response on YouTube versus Canvas or versus Zoom. Let me figure it out. I'm going to figure out the best way to go forward as far as this connection issue goes, because the choppiness, I'm not a fan. All right, folks, we'll see you next week.